Folks, my new book, Not Sick of Winning, A History of President Trump's First 100 Days, is available now. Just head over to notsickofwinning.com to buy it on Amazon. Good afternoon, Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We have with us a special returning guest, James O'Keefe, citizen journalist. He is the founder and exiled of Project Veritas. He now runs O'Keefe Media Group, author of 3 books. I'm looking at them right now on my shelf: Breakthrough, Citizen, American Muckraker, and American Pravda. I've read them all and enjoyed them all. James, we have a lot to discuss about your work and about the legal situation you're involved in. I just saw a little bit of a piece you released about Project Veritas, and it said like you're in talks to return. Can you fill the readers, for listeners in on what it's all about?
Well, I just testified in federal court literally yesterday, and then I confronted a pharmaceutical executive. So that's a day in the life of James O'Keefe. I'm in ongoing litigation with Project Veritas, and I am in talks to get it back. I can't disclose more than those details because I promised the court that I wouldn't.
Okay.
But I did make this film while this was going on called The Truth Inside Veritas, which you just watched. It's a movie about what happened and my ouster. And then there's a lot to dive into this. So where do you want to start?
Well, the first thing I want to start is, it seems to me, everything I've always been told is that if litigation's going on, you keep your big fat mouth shut and you don't discuss it, because anything you say.
I don't do that. And this is a really fascinating thing. I was literally in federal court in New York yesterday. They sued me. First of all, they fired me.
Right.
Fired me February 10th, 2023. And then they indefinitely suspended me without pay. So they expected me to keep being theirs, but that's like slavery. So I just started a new organization. And then they sued me. And they tried to get an injunction to shut me down, federal injunction. I defeated the injunction. And then they dropped the lawsuit maybe like a month or two ago. I countersued for breach of, for intentional infliction of emotional distress, defamation, and a bunch of other torts. And then I began deposing them, conducting videotape depositions.
Yeah.
I'm a very unusual client because I do like to actually talk about the proceedings. It's a public proceeding. Federal courtrooms, your cameras are not allowed, but it's a public information. So what happened yesterday, literally, I just flew back from New York to Florida, where I now live, is Project Veritas went to court and asked the federal judge to stop all depositions of the board because they thought that I was, quote, intimidating witnesses by publishing portions of the deposition. The judge rejected that argument. They also argued that my mere presence, James O'Keefe, just being in the courtroom when the deposition happens, is intimidation.
Wait, hold on. I got to pause you right here because my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, as you just mentioned, federal courthouses are public property.
Correct.
Meaning I don't have to be a party or anything involved in any case unless there's some kind of confidentiality matter where there's a kind of blanket
Correct.
Seal. I'm allowed to sit in that audience. Don't have to identify myself. As long as I'm not disruptive, I can be a witness to what's going on.
But I'm a party to the case.
Right. I'm just saying, but yeah.
I'm the counterclaimant. This is an argument so absurd. You are correct. You can sit in the back room in the benches. You can go into any courtroom. And the judge said, and I'm going to put out a video here where I have the transcript of the proceedings. I will hire a voice narrator. To your point, most journalists, most people don't publish deposition videos and transcripts, but I'm a reporter and that's what I do. So yesterday, that they argued that I shouldn't even be allowed to physically be, as the client, sitting there as the questions are being answered. I think that, Michael, I'm fighting my own shadow. I'm in the organization I founded is making anti-First Amendment arguments, and I think this cuts very deep. It goes into philosophy. It goes into good and evil. That you wrote a book on good and evil that I read a couple chapters before this interview just to refresh myself about the white pill. It goes into envy and deadly sin and greed and all these deep themes. It's a highly unusual argument. The federal judge even said yesterday, I haven't really ever heard someone make such an argument. Usually in witness intimidation, you're trying to prevent people from talking. You're trying to stop the person from testifying. You're not trying to, shine a light on what they're saying. So it's very interesting stuff indeed.
Before I want to ask you something that you can help a lot of people out with right away. I'm confident in saying, and even though you've moved on in many ways, getting ousted from the organization you founded had to be a traumatic experience. This is something that one day you're in one position, the next day you're not. Do you have any advice for people? Because the thing with trauma is it happens like a blink of an eye, right? Like one day you think you're here and it turns out you're not. And regaining your sea legs, so to speak, is something very difficult for a lot of people to do. I've had traumatic experiences in my life. What have you learned from that you could impart to people listening to this who one day are going to get that phone call, their life's going to be turned upside down?
You asked me this question, I believe, 2 years ago, and I regret not telling you what I really learned. And I was still going through it. And you know what I really learned?
Right.
Surround yourself with the right people.
Oh, yeah.
I know it's a cliche. It's a tale of time. I've heard that since I was 20. I didn't understand what it means.
Oh, yeah.
Pardon me for the religious metaphor, but Moses, when he had to keep his hands up, right? And his hands grew tired, but if his hands fell, evil would triumph. So he couldn't keep his hands up anymore. So he literally had to get two guys to hold his hands up. You need your team to be or Medal of Honor winner told me, how you don't break. You get guys beside you can help you carry the load.
Yep.
And I you know what my mistake was, and I'll take responsibility for this. I hired the wrong people. Now you say, why did I do that? Partially I was naive and I did not discern correctly. But the other part of it is, as a citizen journalist, I let everybody in. Oh, you want to help? Come on in. I have opened Noah's Ark. Everyone's allowed on. You can't do that. If you'll have counterintelligence, you'll have spies, you'll have people trying to blow you up. And that was my mistake. I don't think it came from a place of malice. I think it was naivete and believing the best in people. And that was the mistake I made. And my lesson to people is, this was akin to castration. I don't wish it on my worst enemy. I've been arrested by the FBI, raided by the FBI, sued dozens of times, smeared. But being ousted from your own creation, and remember too, no institution would let me do what I do. So I had to create my own institution, and I was removed from my own institution. So it makes me question whether, and this kind of goes to what you talk about in your book about individuals versus the collective, like Ayn Rand. I don't know if institutions are even, or medium to large size institutions can do what I do at scale. You're fighting against human nature. Right. And you're fighting against the temptation of human nature to betray the individual that does what I do. Much like when you wrote about the guy in the Fountainhead. What was his name? Howard Rourke?
Howard Rourke.
Right, Howard Rourke. But I would say those are the advice I'd give is you got to make sure you got the right people around you.
Well, you kind of gave me something to remind people, like when you're young and you're trying to start out, it could be in anything, a band, stand-up comedy, whatever, cookie making business. You look to your friends to be your partners, as you, I'm sure, did to some extent with Project Veritas. And what I want people listening to this, ask yourself is, just because someone's a good friend, you have no idea what they're going to be like as a business partner. In the same way that you have no idea what they're going to be like as a roommate, you have no idea what they're going to be like in the bedroom. You have no idea what they're like if you're married to them. You think, oh, we get along. When we hang out, it's just great all the time. That's only in one context. And you'll very quickly learn, if you have to live with someone or do business with them or be partners with them, their worldview is not going to be the same as yours. And it's going to make things worse often rather than better, as I'm sure you've seen yourself.
I would go a step farther and to say the word friend is an overused term.
Sure.
People that you think that are your friends are actually not your friends. They're just people that were in the same class with you when you were third grade.
Yeah.
And I judge a friend to be someone who is happy for you when you succeed. It's easy to be sad for someone when they're struggling, but and you know what I've also learned, so it's very difficult to find that. So let me just say, the people out there, I have friends. No, you don't. you might have one or two if you're lucky. So
Let
let's just
me just say something. I had this conversation with Gavin McIngus, and I said to him, I don't use the word friend. I say allies, acquaintances, and associates, because the word friend is someone you have lunch with at your office, and it's also the person you call when your mom dies, and these are not the same phenomenon.
Precisely. Well stated. So your audience is thinking, oh, I'll start my muffin business with my friend, or my coffee shop visit. They might be your friends now, but
Yeah.
wait until you go through adversity. Like Joseph Conrad writes in The Heart of Darkness, adversity tests the darkness inside of the hearts of men. So what I found is, I had a founders board, and by the way, nobody that donated a lot of money wanted to be on my board. It was quite unusual because they didn't want the liability. So I put people on the board I probably shouldn't have, people who were willing. So I think, friendship is an overused term.
So one of the people you talk about, and we don't have to, if for legal reasons you don't want to discuss this, we could change the next issue. One of the people you talk about a lot about in the video you made is Matthew Turman, who's I had a I was on friendly terms with him. I saw him at parties. He's been yelling at me on Twitter because I'm not nasty enough to you in these interviews, apparently.
Right.
But it seems that he was central to your ousting from Project Veritas. Can you, and you in your books, you spoke very positively of him. Are you interested at all in discussing the breakdown of that relationship?
I'm willing to discuss whatever you'd like to ask me.
Okay.
Just in general, or where do you want to start?
Well, I mean, it seemed like he, in many ways, is the focus or a main player in these issues that brought you down.
Yeah, I think let me start by telling you a brief story.
Okay.
About 9 years ago, him and I were fishing in the Bahamas with a man, Jim, who is a very very large, wrote hundreds of thousands of dollars in support for Project Veritas nonprofit, and Jim observed his behavior and pulled me aside and said, "James, you've got to get Matt off of this board."
Oh,
Now, Jim
wow.
Jim himself was either a board member, he was about to be. He was a large donor, and I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because Matt wants to be you.
Oh,
Matt wants to be you. He's envious of you. He's jealous of you." Now, some say there's a difference between envy and jealousy, but the deadliest sin is envy. And he'll work to be you. He can't be you. I mean, nobody can be you. Nobody can be Michael Malice. Nobody could be James O'Keefe.
right.
Um, and he warned me about this. And I think eventually this guy got off of the board because I don't think he could tolerate that type of envy and everything that went along with it. So that's kind of I'm sure he'll deny that. He has denied that, but I stand by my reporting that a lot of this was based on this fundamental human ill, this sickness in humanity, which I think is probably one of the worst sins out there. It's the root of all, I think you've written about this, root of all socialism.
Oh,
And
yeah.
it leads to a kind of resentment. And that resentment leads to a kind of vindictiveness. And the vindictiveness, and you watch the film, is so disgusting and so toxic, but it's the final stage in the evolution of what this is drawn from. That's the larger, view of it. We can go into the specifics, but that's my view of what happened.
Start small. A bill you can't pay today, then another. Suddenly your mailbox is flooded with final notices. Pay immediately. Legal action pending. Your phone doesn't stop ringing. You don't answer. You know who it is. Debt collectors, and they're not going away. They want your car, your home, your paycheck, your peace, your family's future. Debt doesn't wait. It destroys. Quietly, then all at once. But there's still a way out. PDS Debt has helped hundreds of thousands escape before it's too late. This is your moment, so take it before debt takes everything. PDS Debt goes beyond the numbers to understand your unique financial situation and craft a personalized plan designed just for you. No minimum credit score required. They're here to help you save more, pay off your debt faster, and start putting money back where it belongs, in your pocket. And PDS Debt is A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau. It boasts thousands of 5-star reviews on Google and has a 5-star rating on Trustpilot. Why? Because PDS has helped hundreds of thousands of people get out of debt. I've had to deal with debt in the past, and it's awful because no matter where you go, no matter what you do, it's always there in the background looming over you. It's awful. The good part is you're 30 seconds away from being debt free. Get your free assessment and find the best option for you right now at pdsdebt.com/welcome. That's pdsdebt.com/welcome. pdsdebt.com/welcome. Let's get back to the show. Let's play a little bit devil's advocate here, right? There are certainly things you must have done when you were at Project Veritas that in retrospect, you're like, you know what? I didn't play this the right way. I could have done it differently. And this kind of gave them ammunition to do what they did. Like, what are some of those things that if you look back, you're like, yeah, I shouldn't have done that. I was wrong.
I think the biggest mistake I made, like I said before, was probably getting the wrong people at the top.
Okay.
That's so let's just get that out of the way. And I know we're trying to get it like, was any of my behaviors, and I will
Right.
get to that in a moment too. But if I had the right chief of staff, I don't think you want, James O'Keefe. I mean, I could raise the money, I could make the product, I can go out in the field, I can do undercover, I can set the creative vision. I don't think you want me managing meetings. But if there's no one there to do that, if there's no one to step up, then I am, the buck stops in me. I'm ultimately responsible.
Right.
So I think it was my mistake not to put the right person in there who could handle those HR issues. And if anything, I put a guy in there who not only didn't handle it, but kind of fomented it and swirled the pot. So that was my first mistake. I think the second thing, let me give you an example. I think stories are more entertaining than abstractions. Like there was this, it got to a point right before this, everything went down, a few weeks before, is I was out there raising so much money. I was working whatever it was, hundreds of days on the road a year, 100 hours a week, so everyone could earn their bread. I felt like I was the horse in Animal Farm about to collapse from exhaustion. I knew it wasn't sustainable. While also being the face of the company, the chief fundraiser, the chief witness, and all the lawsuits, it just wasn't sustainable.
Right.
And it got to a point where my mistake, I put a guy in there who refused to follow my lead. His name was Barry Hinckley. And I said, Barry, we go to Florida to do an event, fundraiser, you got to follow up and make asks of all these people. You got to ask them for $20,000. It's a nonprofit. He said,
Right.
We'll not do that, James. We have to go about this differently. We have to take a year or two to build a relationship. I said, no, Barry, they're expecting an ask. I want you to make an ask. And he said,
hold on. Let me interrupt, because asking for money is tricky. But again, they know where they are, right? If I know I'm going to a charity fundraiser or nonprofit fundraiser, I know someone's coming at me hat in hand. Like, I'm not going to, maybe I'll say no, but I'm not going to be surprised. Like every single person there, and they all have
right.
money.
But let me tell you what I did wrong, because I think I was right in the larger picture. But so I had conversations with him and my colleagues in the fundraising department on the email chain, and I said, guys, I need you to do this. And this is what I need you. Please, no more discussion. We're going to do this. And they said, we really want to do that. Now, we were in a staff meeting on Tuesday. This must have been January 20 something. And they were now protesting in front of the entire senior organization. And that's when I said, listen, if you don't do it, there's the door. I made that statement in front of 12 people. And I think I should have only done it privately. However, it gotten to a boiling point where I was so desperate that, I probably should have fired him before saying what I said. You know what I mean? Like talk, praise in public and, discipline in private. That would be an example of something that I maybe did wrong, and I apologized for it.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of thing often where if people are backed into a corner in front of others to save face, they're going to dig in their heels. Where I don't know about him specifically, but if somebody else, if you took him aside, you're like, hey, this isn't working, X, Y, and Z, right, they'll be a lot more receptive to changing their behavior when they're not put on the spot.
So I did that with him, and his response to that was, no, we need to remove James O'Keefe. And that's where when things took this bizarre and a little you can't fire Joe Rogan from the Joe Rogan Experience.
Right.
You can't fire Tucker Carlson from Tucker Carlson.
But they fired Roseanne from Roseanne.
They did do that. You're right. Yeah. There are some examples, and that's probably the closest one. Yeah, that's for sure.
So was there any part of your mind that thought them getting rid of you be a possibility? Because it would clearly be the end of the PV.
It was unthinkable.
Yeah, right.
And this movie I've made, The Truth Inside Veritas, takes you into that boardroom. You actually hear it, and everything you heard in that film is real. It's from the actual meeting, and it's it felt like a you know, like a struggle session. Like they just wanted to lash me. Like they wanted me to feel abused. And what was the craziest thing for me was watching right wingers behave like this. Like it's not, it was like a union, and it was basically like a strike. Within out of 70 people, perhaps about 12, a lot of the grievances are very petty. Like I stole a pregnant woman's sandwich, which they're still litigating this to this day. Like I take an SUV around with a driver. I was saying, well, I need a driver because I can't be on the phone with donors and with investigations. I'm on the phone constantly in a random Uber X,
Yeah, yeah.
raising you $20 million a year. But it was so petty. And Matt has an economics degree from University of Chicago. George has an MBA from Harvard, and they didn't understand like arithmetic. Like take a helicopter so you can have, save me 7 hours of time so I could ask this guy for $20,000 here and 40,000. It was just it felt so irrational. Irrational. It made me question myself, and it made me realize just how dark human nature actually is when there's no accountability and there's no discipline.
So I had an editor. I don't even mention his name. I think we shared him. And one of the things that he is known for, which I didn't know he was known for, is when you hand him the manuscript, he just makes you rewrite the whole thing. And it was very disturbing to me when I got this note and I talked to another editor and she goes, no, no, no. He did this to my ex-boyfriend as well. And he did this other prominent conservative personality. And for him, it's just he has to put his member on the table just to remind people who was boss. Do you think there was part of that with this kind of looking over your shoulder, just making sure to keep you in your place?
You mean by the individual, the board, or who?
Yeah, but just when they're like this helicopter and this amount of money
It was a
here.
pretext. It was a
Yeah, that's
pretext.
the thing. Yeah.
They Matthew Tierman in this film. I'm just going to continue shamelessly plugging my.
No, please do.
I have no board now, so I'm independent. No one can
Yeah.
tell me what to do. So the trade-off there is The Truth Inside Veritas at O'KeefeMediaGroup.com. It's $9.
And we'll have the link in the YouTube show description. You can click on it right there.
There's this one quote from the board meeting where Matt Tierman says, there will be no output lost on the margins. We will be fine without James O'Keefe. We don't need James, So they actually believed at the time. Everyone else thought it was nuts. No, I shouldn't say that. I don't know what they believed.
Right.
They stated that they would not lose anything getting rid of me. And it was like they wanted the farm without the farmer.
Right.
Or
yeah.
They cut the golden goose. They took all the golden eggs out, and they're like, "We'll be fine. We'll share the spoils." It was very. But I think that envy thing was a catalyst, and I texted this to you. That would be viral with the right carrier. If you had a right board, if you had the right operations officer, chief of staff, they never would have put up with this stuff. They would have said, "You're all fired." And there have been cases where people go on strike, you're fired. But in my case, you had the board in cahoots with the employees. The board members were flirting with the employees, were in text messages with the employees. So Matthew Tierman performed a kind of gain of function on one of the worst human ills in the petri dish of a small but terribly effective organization.
So you have a quote on your wall that's right off camera. Can you show the audience? Because I think it's just a terrific quote. So it goes, "My price is my life." And you sent me a little short where you were being interviewed and you spoke about that quote at some length. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I've got something to add to that as well.
Yeah, this was at Eric Metaxas' Socrates in the City. I said, what is your price? Ask yourself, how much does it cost you to stop from standing for what you believe in or standing for what is right? And almost everyone has a price if you're honest with yourself. And I said to Eric Metaxas at the Socrates in the City event, is it 10 million? Is it 20 million? Is it $100 million? How much money will it cost to buy you? And then I said, if your price is not ultimately your life, then you can be bought. Then you are for sale. And the audience audibly gasped, like men twice my age found this concept so bewildering to them. And I think it's because most people can be bought. And it's either literally or it's not what you think. It's not like people get bribed. It's like.
But can I tell you? I'll tell you exactly what happened. I remember when I graduated college, And my roommate, who had a business degree from Bucknell, prestigious degree, she was excited to have a very shitty job for like 50 grand a year. I think it was 50, which is not small change, but whatever. And it was just miserable work. And she's going to be stuck in this job for a long time. I'm thinking to myself, the Faustian bargain is you sell your soul and you're the greatest violinist on earth. It's not, I've got a 50 grand a year job that I hate and I'm going to be miserable until I retire and die. And when you talk about people's price, it's not like someone's coming up to them with a huge suitcase. Hey, can you turn on your family or can you
Right.
snitch on your neighbor? It's like, I'm going to give you a crappy job and you're going to be denying people's healthcare claims all the time. And you know some of them are right, but you're going to look the other way because it's going to put a roof on your head, over your head.
That's right. The devil doesn't work with suitcases of cash. It's keeping your children's bellies full.
Yeah.
That's the way it always, that's what people don't understand. It's not much. It's actually, I
Very
found
low.
price is usually about $80,000, 100,000 is the median.
Yeah.
People will do anything for 80 to $100,000, including lie under oath. And the instinct for self-preservation is unbelievably strong. Let me make this less abstract because I've been through this. When the FBI raids you
Yeah.
and points guns at your family and puts your wife in handcuffs or your girlfriend, in my case, it was a woman, girlfriend, in handcuffs. Okay, then you really start to test the mettle of the constitution of people. People will do anything to protect themselves, but most people's price is actually their children's life.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this is what Solzhenitsyn writes about in the Gulag Archipelago. I don't have the quote in front of me, but he says something to the effect of, it'd be better in the Soviet Union not to have children at all
Well,
because you will
you
be
didn't get
faced with horrible,
you didn't
thing.
get to this part in the white pill, but I talk about this at length in the white pill because one of the mandates from what became the KGB, the secret police, was Stalin legalized the death penalty. I think he dropped to like 12 or 14. And this is a huge outcry across the world. It's like, what are you doing? But what would happen is if James was arrested, the death warrant for your kids would be signed and visible on the interrogator's desk. And very quickly, James will confess to anything you want.
That's right.
Give me a blank piece of paper because I know you're not joking with that death warrant. And you know if James doesn't break right now, it's going to be one. And one of the things they also did, they had someone, I have the story in the book. I forgot the guy's name. And he wouldn't break. You know, they're doing whatever they can. And they go, okay. And they call his house where his mom was babysitting the kids. They're like, oh, the kids there? Oh, are they in bed? Yeah, no message. Just tell him dad. And he broke just like that. So yeah,
Absolutely.
it's a very well known. This is Americans don't understand the nature of evil and how, and we saw this in Canada. What's the last thing? When the Canadian truckers had their convoy, the police were threatening to take their kids, and the media was egging them on. People forget that part.
Oh, you're right. I don't. The Americans. I mean, I read the Gulag book before the FBI raid, but to live it is something else entirely, for sure.
Guys, I want to talk about a sponsor that is near and dear to my heart and to my family because my nephew uses their product. Also, he has Crohn's. That is Just Thrive. As many of you know, I had stomach issues all my life growing up. And then I met someone who had Crohn's disease and he had recommended probiotics. I'd never heard of it before. And it fixed my issues almost immediately. They're low cost, virtually no risk. And when you have these kind of issues, you think this is just how I am. And I'm telling you, you don't have to live that way. When you try it, you're like, oh, this is what it feels like to be a normal person. If this sounds like something that's hitting close to home, I would strongly encourage you to try Just Thrive. So not only have their probiotics, they also have a new product, which are digestive bitters. Now, what these are, they're tasteless. They're capsules that contain 12 bitter herbs, clinically proven to wake up your digestive system for results you can feel. So it helps with bloat, burps, bellyaches after meals, just comfortable digestion, and Just Thrive Bitters even support natural GLP-1 production, which helps control cravings and helps you keep satisfied longer when it comes to food. Give your gut the care it deserves. Try Just Thrive Probiotics and Digestive Bitters today, risk-free. Save 20% off with the code WELCOME at justthrivehealth.com. See the difference for yourself. Full product refund, no questions asked. justthrivehealth.com, code WELCOME. I don't even know where to start in terms of recommending this. This is something that has helped me out so much in my life. I talked about it before they were a sponsor. I'm going to talk about it to the day I die. Your gut health and your stomach issues are such a thing that affect every aspect of your life. And when you find out that something that's so easily fixed, you want to pull your hair out, as I wanted to do. And I'm so grateful that they're a sponsor. JustThriveHealth.com, code welcome, and you get 20% off, risk-free. Let's get back to the show. There's a funny anecdote about that quote. So people might not remember, in 2008, the late Bernie Mac, who was a great comic, he was performing at an Obama fundraiser. And the kid goes to his dad and goes, Dad, what's the difference between hypothetical and realistic? And Dad goes, go ask your mom and your sister if they had sex with the mailman for $1 million each. And the kid goes, okay. And he goes upstairs and he asks them, and he comes down, he goes, they both said yes. He goes, all right, well, hypothetically, we're millionaires, but realistically, we're living with a couple of sluts. And he got in huge trouble with Obama for this joke. But it's to your point, where there's a number for everyone. And it, like you said, it's much lower. And we saw this also during COVID, how eager, just for some likes on social media, people were eager to turn in their neighbors.
Yeah, this is what you're talking about right now is, I think, the greatest problem in American society. I've lived it, and the cost of, for my cost is usually litigation, because
right.
I have to kind of bear false witness. If I settle a suit, I'm kind of bearing false witness. And Trump was sued, what, 347 times? I don't know the number, but some outrageous, like the guy's like Horatius at the bridge. The fact that he could survive that onslaught, whatever, hundreds of lawyers become fabulously wealthy off of human corruption, a corrupt system. I think the whole court system is a racket. It's a fraud. I've spent millions of dollars on lawyers, and I have to, I'm litigating court cases all the way to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, New York State Supreme Court Court of Appeals, and I'm paying so much money. So my employees are upset because I stole a pregnant woman's sandwich. I had to spend 100 days on the road a year just raising money to pay lawyers. Yeah. So they were inconvenienced that I may have taken their sandwich at lunch by accident. But my price was that burden. I'm not complaining. That's my burden. I don't have a family yet. And one of the dangers about me having children is there is no question the state may want to use that against me. Oh, yeah. And when I said this I think I said this on your show last time, when the FBI came to my home, and your mind goes to a very dark place. Now, in the January 6th case, total overreach, but some of them may have committed a misdemeanor. In my case, it wasn't even a colorable crime. Some guy dropped off a document on my doorstep. So your mind starts going to places you don't want to go. Are they putting child porn on my phone? Are they putting cocaine in my underwear drawer? And then the fear sets in. And I consider myself a pretty fearless person. But I had never felt such fear just completely and totally overtake my body to the point where I was no longer thinking rationally. And again, I look at things in terms of danger, not fear. But at that moment, I was completely paralyzed with fear. And I can't imagine what it's like being a father. Oh, yeah. And this is a huge issue here that we have. So I wanted people to understand that. And then I think maybe you and I can talk about what the real issue is, which is the truth, and whether people are even capable of wanting to know what the truth is, because I think that's another problem we have here.
Well, let me ask this. I had a quote that I came up with fairly recently, which is just very pithy and very proud of, which I realized, which is the average human does not run information through a true-false filter, but through an us-them filter. And if the FBI put some kind of nasty stuff on your phone, there are plenty of people who are tripping over themselves to believe it simply because you're James O'Keefe and I hate you, and therefore whatever bad that is said about you must be true.
Yeah, and there was one brave guy at the New York Times named Ben Smith who came out when they were all like, yes, decapitate O'Keefe, have him rot in jail. I hope he gets raped in prison. These are all, the comments from, unfortunately, from liberals. I don't even know what that word means anymore. I guess left-wing people, liberal, old-fashioned liberals, new liberals, neo. I don't know what all that means, but these are comments. And there was one brave guy who said, hey, guys, we shouldn't be cheerleading this. And when he did that, his name is Ben Smith. He was a New York Times reporter. Then the ACLU came out in my defense. I mean, you had the press committee come out. It took one guy to take a stand and say, and I think it was out of their instinct for self-preservation, because they do the same damn thing that I do. They
Right.
get sent materials, perhaps stolen by somebody else. I didn't steal it. You have a First Amendment right in this country to receive information stolen by somebody else, as long as you
Right.
didn't participate in that.
Right.
And they saw that through the lens, hey, if Trump gets in, this could happen to me.
Right.
And that's why they did that. But I hear your point there.
Let's talk about some of your recent work because you've been making huge waves in the first half of 2025. The one story I'm particularly thinking of is you got Pam Bondi to kind of move the needle. Can you break down what happened there?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That was a tough decision for me to publish. Um, at the end of the day, people call us activists, but we are journalists, and I
Sure.
will publish something that's newsworthy. This was a recording that was provided to me by one of my undercover people, but they were not intending to obtain this on Pam. They were doing something different on a different assignment they were in a restaurant in Washington D.C. Pam Bondi was having brunch with somebody, and the individual wearing the hidden camera walked by, and Pam shared this on April 28th, I believe, shared that there were tens of thousands of Epstein videos with little kids. Now, this was
Oof.
huge because
Of
at the
course.
time, nobody knew this.
Right.
And so I decided, okay, I'm going to reach out to the Attorney General for comment. We emailed the press secretary, a guy in the office there, and we traded back and forth. And he wanted to know, like, what is your plan with this? What are you going to do? And I think, and I don't know if this was a mistake or not, but we provided the exact quote of what she said. And we have this. He wanted to know what else we had.
Right. Of
I said,
course.
well, we're still reporting on this. We're trying to ascertain what's going on. I had some sources in the FBI. I still have sources inside the FBI. And suddenly, on May 8th, some about 9 days after that date or thereabouts, Pam Bondi goes to the White House and literally says out loud the thing that I had sent her press secretary. And I was like, so I had to completely shift my editorial calendar, produce that piece, and put it out, and then tell the story. And I think the story there was, why did the Attorney General of the United States disclose this information to a self-described nanny in a restaurant before she shared it with the American people? Follow-up question: why did Kash Patel tell Joe Rogan that there are no videos? I think he said on Epstein Island.
Right.
But Pam Bondi says there's tens of thousands of videos with Epstein, assuming there are going to be other bad dudes, not
Yeah.
just Epstein. If there's 10,000 videos, there's got to be one. Got to be one. I mean,
Of
as a
course.
reporter, there's always a story. So to hear Cash, who I think is a good man, say there's no there, I can tell you there's always a story there. There's always a story.
So I
So
mean,
go ahead.
I'm just going to say I don't want you to speculate too loosely, but there's a lot. The whole Epstein thing. A lot of people have constant questions about. Understandably, they're asking why no one's been arrested. They're asking why this stuff's not getting released. Do you have any inside information, or do you have any theories? Do you have any kind of strong sense of like this is close to probably it?
I don't. One of the things I don't do, Michael, is I actually don't speculate. I don't
Okay,
have to. I don't want to offer my opinion or my speculation. I just want to report the facts of what happened and ask questions.
sure.
And I have been in touch with sources inside the FBI. One of the individuals told me in earlier in the spring there was boxes and boxes of stuff being transported between Virginia and New York. There was all this information, and to me, it seems like there's a little bit of incongruence
Yeah.
between what Couch is saying and what Pam Bondi is saying. So the question I have is this: was what Pam said untrue? And why did she disclose that to a person in a restaurant before she told the American people? It seems to me an issue there, and there will be more on this. And it goes deeper. It's not just about Epstein. I think there's some deeper themes about institutions and
Oh yeah.
if I put you in as the director of the FBI, how would you fare? How would
I
you,
don't.
Michael Malice,
I
fare?
don't think either of us have any idea because I don't know what happens when I come in there and they close the door behind me and they sit me down. I have zero idea.
Exactly. Did they put you in a skiff and show you the Zapruder video and
Right.
say, "Hey, you better. This is what happens." And I mean, I'm not. I mean, I don't know, but I think the simplest explanation is bureaucracy and institutions. I speak to you as someone who was literally fired from the organization
Right.
that I created to literally do the guerrilla thing that no one else would do. I'm not sure it's the man at the top. I think it's the the very idea of a bureaucracy is anathema to perhaps doing the right thing. And people tell me all the time, for example, my affidavit came out, every word was redacted in the probable
Right.
cause. Every word, it's literally all
Yeah.
black. There is one word that's not redacted. You should pull it up on your screen if you can. It's actually a joke. And what people say to me in
Wait, do you
Republican
think it's a
polls,
joke or do you think it's a fu?
I think that whatever is behind those black bars, and it's 3 pages, and it's all redacted, and
Right.
even the little numbers are redacted. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah.
I think it's a crime to lie to the FBI,
Sure.
and whatever is underneath those black bars implicates people,
Yeah.
powerful people.
But
FBI
I.
informants are behind those black bars. Sources are behind those black bars. So I have to protect sources and methods. So if I'm the director of the FBI, my job is to protect sources and methods. What if your sources lied to the FBI? What if they entrapped James? What if they made something up about James O'Keefe? So you're conflicted as the leader in quote unquote protecting your sources and methods and doing the right thing. And well, effectively, you'd have to like blow the whistle on your own organization.
I disagree with you. I think what that was is them being told they have to hand it over and them giving the finger and being like, you're not going to, oh, I'm handing it over. I'm handing it over on my terms. Make me. Because they did not have to redact literally every single word. And the fact that they did so to me reeked of defiance rather than protection.
Well, we may have a little bit of a disagreement there, but perhaps two things can be true. And I'm
Sure.
going to sue the Department of Justice.
Okay.
I have to now sue the Department of Justice and go through more Kafka-esque bullshit. Why can't they just do the right thing? One more comment on this. So people in Republican politics, when I tell them the story, they're like, "Oh, you know Cash? You know Pam?" I was like, "What is this? Do I know Cash? Like I've met him. I've interviewed him. Very good. I think he's a good guy. Well, just call him." I'm like, "What is this? Call Cash now? Is this like an infomercial? Like, is the administration of justice require every citizen make a personal phone
Right.
call to the top of the organization to achieve the administration of justice? I mean, is it that corrupt?" And the answer is yes. You have to ask for a favor from the person at the very top for anybody to do the right thing. I reject the premise. I think the system is completely broken, and the only solution is for people to tell the truth and pay the ultimate price.
Well, and to your point, we know this is true because I don't think the Biden presidency was that much of an anomaly. It's now very clear to everyone outside of Occupy Democrats that Biden wasn't running the executive branch of the federal government, right? But to that point is, I don't think Cash and Pam Bondi have as much power as people think they do because they're just one person. So you have huge organizations under you, organizations that are playing the long game with very, very smart people who know how to, stick to their lane and make sure their little piece of pie is controlled and maintained. And there's only so much bandwidth to try to affect change within these giant bureaucracies that have been sustained for decades, if not centuries.
Yeah, they have people underneath them, and if you're the CEO or the governor or the
Right.
leader, the director, you don't have time to. You're so busy on television.
Yes.
You're communicating. You're in the field as you should be. Yeah. And the IRS guy told me, one of the IRS guys told me he can hire like 4 people at the IRS. This is one of the possible commissioners, and there's 80 or there's 90,000 people.
Right.
So, but I find it so funny that people in politics, the world's so upside down. Oh, call Cash. You know Cash. I reject the premise. I'm not going to call Cash.
Right.
I reject the premise. I have to rub elbows and cocktail and donate to to get my administration of justice. You know, and I say that as someone who, you know, is my newsroom was raided by the FBI.
Right.
If this happened in Ukraine or Estonia or Russia, our State Department would probably issue a press release about it.
Yeah.
You know, so it's you know, so much more to say about this, but
As the weather warms up, you might want to rethink your skincare routine, especially if you're using retinol, which can leave your skin more vulnerable to sun damage. Here's why OneSkin's facial moisturizer OS1 Face this summer is the product for you. In lab studies, OS1 Face boosted collagen production similar to retinol, but without that sun sensitivity risk. And unlike retinol, which can disrupt your skin barrier, OS1 Face strengthens it. It helps your skin become even more resilient to the sun, heat, pollution, and other types of environmental stressors. The key is OneSkin's patented OS1 peptide. It works by targeting the signs of aging at the cellular level, something retinol can't do. In fact, it's the first peptide scientifically proven to reverse skin's biological age. So instead of irritating your skin like other topicals can, you're helping your skin look, feel, and act like its younger self. So get stronger, smoother, healthier skin this summer with OneSkin. You'll save 15% off your first purchase when you use code Malice at oneskin.co. I had redness on my face because I got my CPAP machine and the straps were leaving red marks. So thankfully, OneSkin had sent me stuff and I used it and it worked within a day. So thank you, OneSkin, for making me feel better about myself. OneSkin is the world's first skin longevity company. By focusing on the cellular aspects of aging, OneSkin keeps your skin looking and acting younger for longer. For a limited time, you can try OneSkin with 15% off using code Malice at oneskin.co. That's 15% off oneskin.co with code Malice after you purchase. They'll ask you where you heard about them. So please support the show, tell them we sent you, and give your skin the scientifically proven gentle care it deserves with OneSkin. Let's get back to the show. There is something I do want to hear your opinion on, which is just your opinion. I'm very curious if you've been watching what's been going on with the criminalization of speech in the UK, and how people are getting arrested for Facebook posts. A man was ex-Muslim, was burning the Quran. He was attacked with a machete. The guy in the machete is walking the streets. The Quran burner's in jail. And if you felt that the election of Officer Harris and Tim Waltz would have pushed us in that direction.
Officer Harris.
She's the top, you know.
It took me a moment. I was thinking, wait, it's a good question. I was in the UK with Andy No. You know of him?
Of course, I love Andy. He's my favorite bullying target.
And I really like Andy.
Oh, he's so fun. He's been on the show many times. Yes, we're good pals.
He's just a decent human being, yes. I think, and a kind person.
Yeah.
And I was on, what is it, Whitechapel Road, or it's the one heavily Muslim. Are you familiar with that area?
No, I'm not. Okay, sorry.
It's like a part of London where almost all Arab and Muslim. And I walked down the street with Andy with a GoPro. This is in like March. And I mean, I saw this is on YouTube. I saw this housing complex for illegal immigrants. And I just walked up to the door. I wasn't there in my journalist capacity. I was just kind of walking around and curious. And this bureaucrat ninny came out and was just like really angry. You're not allowed to be here. It's like, come again? Like, it was just,
right, yeah.
Just walking down the sidewalk. And she's like, you're not allowed to talk to these immigrants. You're not allowed. And it was like a little tiny dose of totalitarianism that I was not used to because I'd never actually been to the UK ever before.
Oh God! Wow. Okay.
Whoa! That was this ninny. There's Somali dudes hanging out, smoking cigarettes. It's all like it's a big party, and I'm just this guy just standing there. And I was just talking to one of the Somali guys. I was like, "Hey, may I ask you where you guys are from?" And she came rushing towards me, and I looked at Andy and I was like, "Whoa!"
Yeah.
And he's like, "Now you understand." And he actually said it was even brave for me to even ask a question. I was like, "Really?" So that was a wake-up call for me, and that's what I can say about it. That's my experience.
Sure, but how concerned are you? Because I think in many ways what goes on in the UK as a preview of what goes on here, Thatcher in 79, then Reagan in 80, Brexit, and then Trump getting elected. And it seems very clear Hillary Clinton has publicly spoken very recently about arresting people who provide misinformation, disinformation, which she would easily call you a purveyor of. Tim Waltz as well talked about this. This has been the term fake news came from the left in terms of when they thought Hillary was going to win, they were going to start cracking down on social media.
That would have to be litigated in the Article 3 courts. If they were to start arresting journalists, and your point is, are we headed that way? And I mean,
right.
That's an existential question. Does history repeat? You're asking me if history repeats itself. I mean, I guess so. I don't know. I like to believe the opposite, but that's a biblical question you're asking me. But a more technical question is, what are they going to start, doing, jailing journalists? And I think the Article 3 courts are. I just got out of federal court yesterday. I'm in court almost every day, Michael, in one way or the other, almost every day. I'm not exaggerating. I don't mean physically. Sure. I mean, I'm appealing emotions. I'm rid of certiorari. The Article 3 courts in the United States generally are, when it comes to the First Amendment, are pretty favorable.
Okay.
And I mean, just yesterday they were trying to argue that I was intimidating witnesses by publishing depositions, and the judge is like, "No way! I'm not going to prohibit." This is a federal judge in New York. I'm not going to prohibit O'Keefe from doing this. So I think you're looking at people who are going to be on the bench after Trump first term for 30 years, 40 years. The Supreme Court right now. I would think it would take a few decades for that to change. Now you're asking, will it change? I don't think so. Probably not in the next 20 to 30 years to start jailing journalists. That there would have to be a total tsunami sea change in the work that like the Federalist Society did to put people on the bench who, that's in America. I'm not talking about overseas.
Right. I understand. Well, I'm very glad to hear you say that, because this is probably one of my biggest concerns. The amount of people who have powers, positions of influence, who are cheering on what they did with the truckers in Canada, who are perfectly happy to have blasphemy laws like they're starting to have in the UK. There's a lot of people, and I'm sure you'd agree with due to your work, who would love us to return to a COVID style, and I mean a lot of citizens who were happier under COVID, when everyone kind of had their role and had to look out for everybody else and turn them in. This was their preferred mode of living.
Can you think of an example in this country, though? Because I've been so heads down in my investigative work, I don't see every current events each day. Can you think of an example legally where that happened in America recently, where there was a huge First Amendment issue in the courts?
Well, not in the courts, but for example, the First Amendment guarantees the right to assemble peacefully. And no one even invoked that as a hypothetical during the lockdowns. If I can't have a funeral, that's a violation of the First Amendment. If you want to make me put a hazmat suit on, okay, I'll put a hazmat suit on. I still can do that. That's a brazen violation, in my opinion, of 1A, and no one even brought that up.
That's a fair point. There was that federal judge, and was it early 2022 in Florida, who said, you don't have to wear a mask on an airplane anymore. I mean, that's a fair point. There could be some exigent circumstance where they suspend habeas corpus, and
sure,
you're not allowed to report on that. And if that were to happen, what you will need a few brave souls. You don't need many. You just need a few to do it anyway.
That's right.
And litigate. And I've been in federal court so much, and it's so terrifying. It's not easy to be deposed and take the stand and go to the appeals and pay the lawyers, but you just need a few people to be willing to go to jail. Because I think if you go to jail, and if you're willing to be persecuted, blessed are the persecuted, if you just lean into that and say, all right, I'm going to read in prison, and you have a bunch of people willing to do that, the American people, I believe, the Americans, you push them too far, they start pushing back. I don't mean that in a violent way. I just mean they say, you're all voted out. I'm bringing new judges locally in. I think there's a spirit that we have in this country that doesn't exist in the UK. We're kind of cowboys. But I think we need to see someone do that. Someone's got to be the brave guy. That's my
I agree with you broadly speaking, but I also think, and I'm confident you'd agree, that COVID gave a lot of very evil people some very useful information about what the limits of American compliance are. They ran the test, they know where the line is or approximately where it is, and they can play accordingly.
Fair enough. That's a fair point. It's about human nature. You're making a point about
That's
human
right.
nature.
I thought
Which
Americans would be much more defiant than they were, and that speaks to me as well.
I think that you're making a very profound point about human nature, which is what this is really all about. I
Yeah.
think I do think that all you need, it's like that cliche, it takes one to make a
You're right,
majority of
though. Yeah.
vote. You
Just
just
like,
like Ed Snowden is an example of this guy, love him or hate him. It doesn't matter whether you love him or hate him. He changed everything. One
well,
guy.
I'll give you another example that happened quite recently. Robbie Starbuck, who you probably know, he called a company, I forget what it was, who's the first one, and he said, "You know what? You're got all this DEI stuff from top to bottom. We have all the data. We're going to publish. And what's your response to this?" And they said, "You know what? We're pulling it." I forget which the company was first, but once they did it, he went day after day to all these other companies, and once that first company didn't have any blowback, if I'm number 2, 3, 4, or 5, what do I care? I saw, the tide has turned. He's not getting destroyed. It takes very little courage on my part to follow suit. And in fact, then it becomes like a school of fish. Because if I'm the 15th one, then certainly no one's going to single me out. What do I, then I'm divesting myself of something that's ruining my company, that was hurting my company, and now it's all upside.
I call it whistleblowing in numbers.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
The problem you have with whistleblowing in numbers that I found is that inevitably you're going to have people like pretend to be the whistleblower that betrays the other one. So it's very difficult. I think what I really am fascinated by, and I'm learning, you probably know more than I do, and I would love to read more about this because I'm really fascinated by this. I've lived through this, not to the degree of like, Trump is the number one example, but just human nature just I don't know that people want to know the truth. I've learned since I last spoke to you something. I think people want comfort and safety.
Do you
They
know what the
don't
quote
want to
is?
know the truth.
Here's the
What's the
quote.
quote?
H.L. Mencken, who you're probably a fan of, newspaper man from the
Yeah,
1920s. The average man does not want to be free. He simply wants to be safe.
there it is.
That's the quote.
Mencken also wrote that. Didn't he say people believe what they want to believe, or something
That's
like
right.
that?
Or yes.
It's truth is, and I'm talking about like something I'm just discovering this after doing this for 20 years. I made a movie called Line in the Sand last year. I spent the whole year doing this. There's this one scene in this film, Line in the Sand, it's called. It's on Tucker's network, where there's a girl in the desert, okay, and she's all alone, and she's got her clothes are tattered. She's a real person. This is a documentary film I made. Sex trafficked girl. You don't see any rape, but you see her drugged, and she's 9 years old, and she's standing all alone in the desert. And your imagination is often worse than the thing. You're like, I can't handle it. What I discovered as a filmmaker is you don't really ever see scenes like this. Not really. You hear about it. Sound of Freedom is a great movie, but it was a recreation. It wasn't real people. It was actors. But just seeing the girl, I didn't show that gruesome stuff. I just showed her standing there. The audience couldn't handle it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Or emotionally overwhelmed. And then I studied that deeper, and I began to realize that what they felt was shame, and part of that shame was that they felt like they weren't doing enough, and they almost resented me for showing them that. Like, it's weird. It's like it made them uncomfortable and ashamed. And I found that people that they sometimes want to destroy the person who's showing them the truth, because the truth isn't gentle. It's like a mirror, and the mirror shows people who you really are. And that one scene in that film, people are like, I can't deal with that. I can't see that.
Do you know
So
what the most? Oh, sorry, Ed.
Go ahead. I'm done.
No, the what this speaks of is something I learned about in the last year, which is the most profound piece of public art I think I've ever heard of. Are you familiar with the Comfort Woman statues, also called statues of peace?
Remind me.
Well, I'm going to start getting choked up just talking about it. So, what the Koreans have done is they have a statue of a young woman sitting on a bench, and she just stares at the Japanese embassies to confront them with the years of widespread sexual assault on young women. And she's just looking at them. She's sitting there calmly. And when you know what it is, it's so powerful because it's just a challenge, and it's a calm challenge. And everyone looking at this, you're like, why didn't I do more? how is this being allowed still to be swept under the rug? And she just sits there permanently just watching them. It's this very, very, there's several of them throughout the world. And the Japanese, of course, deny it. And it's a huge political thing. But there's one in Melbourne, there's one in Germany, there's one in Italy. It's very, very intense.
I will take a look at that. There was one lady who came up to me and she said, what can I do? It was long, she was having an internal monologue with herself in front of me.
Right.
But what can I do? I'm just trying to, I think someone actually said to me, do you think that you're better than me? I'm like, what? People, you get my point. I think they feel, and I think as a filmmaker, or forget filmmaking, as a truth teller.
Yeah.
I don't know that, I don't know that people are capable of handling the truth. And I think it's very punishing to tell the truth. And that's why I go back full circle to this whole price is my life thing. Because what price are you willing to pay to speak the truth? That's the question. That's a rhetorical question I have for those watching this right now is what price are you willing to pay? And let's be honest with yourself. Be honest. That's what I have to say about that.
Folks, head over to malice.locals.com where James took questions from supporting listeners. Folks, if you want to watch the new documentary, the first part of it's really good. It's called The Truth Inside Veritas. James's work can be supported at O'Keefe Media Group. James, we're running out of time. What has been your favorite part of this interview?
I like talking to you about human nature and truth and your quote from H.L. Mencken. That we could spend an hour on that. That was my favorite thing about human nature and whether people really want to find the truth.
You are welcome.
Hey, it's James Altucher. I've been an entrepreneur, investor, best-selling writer, stand-up comic, and whatever it is I'm interested in, I get obsessed. Yes, it's led to success, but it's also led to such heartbreaking failure. I have failed more times than I can count. I wish in my life I had had people to talk to. That's why I started the James Altucher Show and bring on some of the most brilliant minds in every area of life. People like Richard Branson, Sarah Blakely, Mark Cuban, Danica Patrick, Gary Kasparov, and I wanted to find out exactly how they've navigated the highs, the lows, and everything in between. No fluff, just raw stories and real advice. I've talked to 1,500 of the most amazing people on the planet. So if you want to learn from the best and skip the same old canned interviews, we're all about helping you find your next big idea, level up your thinking, and ultimately to choose yourself. So let's do this together. Subscribe now to The James Altucher Show.
This summer, Pluto TV is exploding with thousands of free movies. Summer of Cinema is here. Feel the explosive action all summer long with movies like Gladiator, Mission Impossible, Beverly Hills Cop, Good Burger, and Transformers: Dark of the Moon. Bring the action with you and stream for free from all your favorite devices. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.